Wallace, tell us who you are and what you do.
So, as you said, my name is Wallace Chigona. I'm a professor in the Department of Information Systems at the University of Cape Town in South Africa.
Describe the course that you'd like to highlight for us.
I'd like to highlight a module in our master's program. So the module is Information Communication Technologies for Development, so ICT4D. So that's what I would like to highlight here.
Tell us about what you teach in this course.
Our main project of our degree program is a business analyst, somebody who can think about the business and think of a technological solution to that business. But over years, I think what we have seen is that actually, even though people have been emphasizing on business and technology, there's been a growing trend of people using technology in the personal space.
In business, we talk about the need to improve communications, typically for marketing purposes, but there's also communicating within. Is that something that you cover in your course as well?
Yes, in the master's course or even in the undergraduate course, we cover that. So, for them to appreciate the people in the business, to appreciate the business needs for information and the flow of information. So supporting within the organization and outside the organization as well. So that's the core message.
What advice might you have for business leaders to integrate better the IT people into the business processes?
The key thing is that to see IT and business as the same thing. So it's the alignment of business IT alignment. If you see IT as a separate thing and business as a separate thing, then we're missing the point. But if you see the sort of IT as serving the business, as being part of the business, then I've got it sorted out. So the idea is to have the business IT alignment. It's part of the planning, it's part of the design of your business system.
In this way, Wallace, it makes me think that IT is strategic.
Very much so. I think IT is strategic. Of course, you could use IT for the basic stuff, but I think IT becomes important when IT gives you the advantage as a business person. So IT is sort of strategic. You should think of how can I be better with IT? How can I improve my business process and be better than than other companies by using IT? So IT is very strategic, and IT should be strategic. Especially nowadays, if you want to compete with others on the global market. So it doesn't matter where you are, whether sitting in France or sitting in Africa. You should think of the competition as a global and how IT can be leveraged to achieve those goals. Yeah.
What advice would you have to a CEO with regard to integrating the IT into a more strategic element of their business?
In the old models, which other people still carry on now, is that IT was positioned a bit down the hierarchy. So like you have the top management there, but there'll be no IT person. So maybe then the IT person will be down somewhere there. So there was no input from the IT into the business. But again, business didn't have a good understanding on how IT could fit into the business. So having a structure where IT people, IT management is represented at a higher level, that helps a lot in terms of getting IT as part of the thing.
Wallace, you're based in Cape Town, and while South Africa is developing fast, let's call it more of a developing country. And in developing countries, information and communication technologies play an incredibly important role. What does it take for a company that's in that space, an ICT, to gain traction and success in bringing better ICT infrastructure into the company, developing countries?
One should invest in training their people or recruiting the right people to do the right job, while still sort of being aware of the cultural issues in the business.
You mentioned Africa, 54 countries.
Yes.
And within each country, a lot of different often sections and factions. So how can one go about understanding better these different populations? Because not only is there culture, but there's also different infrastructures, different foundations already existing when you're trying to bring in information and communication technologies into the country. So how do you improve your insertion into these different countries when there are so many differences in a way that's financially viable?
The mistake is to assume that actually kind of Africa is homogeneous. So think, I've got a solution and then I'll take it to South Africa to work, or I'll take it to Togo to work, and it doesn't work. So there are no shortcuts, I guess. So one needs to understand the different contexts where one is operating. I mean, maybe there's some kind of similarities. I mean, maybe one could say, okay, countries around this area will behave this way in the business space. But there's still some sort of specific, narrow, specific things which one needs to take into account. Of course, it's possible. I mean, there are lots of companies operating from South Africa with branches in other countries and doing a great job. But still more, they have to customize some of the operations, I mean, the people side of business. You can't just impose technology from somewhere else and then hope that people will buy in.
What makes South Africa and many other countries in Africa different is that there's a very different infrastructure.
Yeah.
How should companies be approaching that, considering that it's very different from what they're used to doing?
Instead of kind of taking the traditional route of moving from PC to network kind of thing, Africa is almost like, in many cases, leapfrogged. Okay, I mean, sort of to using more of the mobile technology and some kind of alternative network infrastructure to support the diverse and spread kind of business operations. So, in terms of doing business in that kind of space, one should understand the other alternative ways of connecting, of using technology. I mean, for example, now, mobile, the cell phone is a big thing. So even though maybe I think in Europe, maybe I think the typical workspace would be a tablet or a PC, in Africa, maybe I think the cell phone plays a big role, both at work, at home, and in a personal space. So I think a business trying to work in this space should take that again into account and think of alternative ways, creative ways of doing business. We have seen many cases, I think, like in healthcare, where I think the doctors and nurses communicate much more using mobile technology. I mean, we've seen this like even in the corporates, where I think for mobile communication is becoming more and more the commonplace and the easy way of communicating between different people within the business.
Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, you see a lot of innovative ways of using what we would call more low-tech, these mobile phones. And yet they're extremely innovative. What do you think the learnings could be for companies and the way they operate in their countries and more mature countries that we could take from the ways that these entrepreneurs and these companies are operating in Africa?
I mean, of course, we tend to think of it as low-tech or frugal innovations. But again, one maybe could look at it as some kind of flexible innovations or flexible technologies. So, I mean, if you look at the global trend now, when the bring on device to work, for example, spreading in Europe, and I mean, one could actually bring this device to be a mobile technology. So, while Africa maybe has come to those innovations out of necessity, out of the lack of alternative things, I think the innovations are so powerful and so useful, so personal to the employee. And that's kind of critical, because I think if the technology and the employee are connected, are the same thing and kind of joined together, then kind of people tend to be more productive. So I would actually suggest or propose that actually if those kind of concepts would be exported to other countries where technologies are so embedded and at a cheaper cost. So it's even cheaper for the organization and flexible for both the organization and the employees.
To what extent are the humanities part of what you do? Because when you're talking about communication, you talk about management and making it more personal, to what extent do you talk about this in your course?
I mean, that's the center. So, I mean, in the ICT4D, that would be the central point. I mean, technology has got no value if there's no human side to it. It's just a gadget. So you need that human side to it. The discipline our discipline is sort of multidisciplinary. So many people bring ideas from different fields. So sort of we bring theories and learnings from sociology, from anthropology, from psychology, from technology to make up this understanding of how technology should be used. We are currently trying to come up with a new program in our master's program, which is sort of combining more actively humanities and IT. We have a program in our undergraduate program, where sort of we teach humanities students, or we come together and we learn from humanities, and again they learn from us to have this project. But we're thinking of taking this to postgraduate as well in the near future.
What's your message with regard to these multiple disciplines about how to be better at teamwork and working together and collaborating despite the diversity of opinions that come to the table?
I think what we have tried to do, like actively in the course, is to stop paying lip service to having this integration. Just come along. I've got people from everywhere, but actually, maybe sort of have students work in teams, have students present their research with and share with one another. So by the end of the course, there's a large appreciation of the value of humanities, the value of the knowledge from engineering or from computer science. So by actively engaging the students, but sort of allowing them to engage with each other actively, we tend to have that synergy, and it adds richness to our project.
So I hear you, Wallace, and you have sometimes these pushback, I'm going to guess, from certain countries that say, well, that's not how we do it in my place. And that's the kind of stuff we have happening in business. Because in business, that's not how I've always been successful.
Yes.
That's not how we do it over here in my department. So what kinds of processes do you try to put in place to allow for those confrontations to happen, and then allow for a stronger collective learning out of those confrontations? How do you favor that diversity and allow for those confrontations to exist?
By sort of allowing the students to work in groups and to present their views and to respect other students. I think by the end of the year we are able to achieve what we want, which is an appreciation that actually good ideas and innovations come from putting diverse things together and let them mature and grow.
Technology is changing all the time. How do you stay abreast?
It's tricky, like in academics, because you are busy with reading the books and whatever, and kind of missing out what's happening in the industry. We're kind of lucky in that in our program I've got lots of people who are working and studying. So it's kind of this sort of tend to bring the industry experience into our teaching, as well as taking our teaching to them. So that's one way we use that. I think students are given space to teach us, to share with us what they're doing at work, what they're encountering at work, and so on. But again, being in Cape Town, being in a big city like Cape Town, it's got advantages because there are often conferences and events happening around the city. So I think one should kind of give themselves time to go to these events and to have a chance of catching up.
How does one measure success in bringing information communication technology into environments where social, political, and infrastructure issues can make progress complicated?
What I think is a challenge in measuring success is that we may tend to focus on the business bottom line. There are other intangible benefits or intangible things which one can appreciate from the technology. We were talking about the internal communication, the internal atmosphere of the people. And that's kind of a great thing. If technology is sort of making people happier and maybe more productive and sort of wanting to go to work and do the work, that's a great thing. We are at the point where I think some of our research is trying to come up with other ways of measuring success of business investment, of IT investment in business. Especially looking at ways which be more applicable in the African context. Because actually it's kind of context-based. Maybe I think in Europe could have a different measure. Could have a different measure in Singapore. But maybe so we need a different measure when you're operating in South Africa or in Nigeria or other countries, yes.
Based on your experience, where do you think are the most interesting areas of development in your space in the next few years? Where do you get the most excited looking out?
I think the excitement now is in wearable technology. So I think what you can, having the watch, having the phone, having things on you. So I think that's where the things will be interesting, because now that raises issues of privacy. And sort of this stuff, so it's kind of the issue of privacy is kind of interesting when you think of it, because what does it mean when we're talking about privacy in different countries? And again, for different people of different ages. So the wearable technology, I think, brings new challenges, sort of new exciting challenges for research to look at how people are going to adopt those things, how business are going to find ways of integrating those things. So, how is my employer going to sort of take advantage of my research, my wearable research, or my Google glasses for my productivity? So that to me raises interesting issues, of interesting social, psychological issues about technology and about business and how all these things come together.
How has the research process in your space been evolving over the last few years? Maybe where do you see it going in terms of getting peer review, substantiation of research in such a moving space?
There's often a challenge in IT space, for research, because things are moving so fast. Where I see research going is we should try to find new ways of collecting information from the people and from things. The traditional ways of having a questionnaire or having an interview may not be applicable, may not be adequate for us to measure and observe things going on. So we need other alternative ways of getting information for research. Of course, that raise points of ethics. So we need to come up with new ethical ways of getting data from people in this diverse thing. But again, I think we need just ways of collaborating across the global. So I think what we're doing in Africa, what's being observed in Africa is interesting for somebody operating in Europe. Similarly, I think what's happening in Europe is interesting for somebody operating in Africa. So if we can have research and researchers working together across the continents, across the countries, I think that will add lots of values to research.